Welcome. Once again, you're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper. And folks, I'll be in the San Francisco Bay Area October 29th through the 31st at the Dunphy Hotel, San Mateo, California. The number to call is area code 415-905-8874. That's area code 415-905-8874. Let me see, I'll be doing a lecture on Sunday, October the 31st at 12:30 p.m. Also a workshop later that same afternoon, October the 31st at 3:30 p.m. I'll be there the whole weekend. We'll have a booth. We'll have tapes of the Hour of the Time there. They'll be at a reduced rate because you won't have to pay postage. And my book will be available. And, of course, I'll be there if you just want to stop by and chat for a while. Remember, that's the Dunphy Hotel, San Mateo, California, October 29th through the 31st. The number to call is area code 415-905-8874. For those of you in the southeast segment of the United States, I will be in Atlanta, Georgia on November the 14th. I will be speaking in the Chamblee Community Center on that date, and the number to call is area code 404-986-0802. Once again, November the 14th in Atlanta, Georgia. I'll be speaking at the Chamblee Community Center. The number to call for information is area code 404-986-0802. Now, both of these events in San Mateo and in Atlanta, Georgia cost some money. I don't know exactly how much because I'm an invited speaker. You need to call those numbers and talk to them. But as usual, when I get there, I will arrange for a lower rate for CAGI members. Make sure you bring your welcoming letter, anything signed by me, or your press credentials, and that will be good for your discount. If you have any problems, come and see me personally. I'll verify that you're a CAGI member and make sure that you get your discount. Well, folks, tonight is going to be illuminating. I can tell you that for sure. Let me tell you first, right off the bat, before we get into the subject of tonight's broadcast, that the media corporation, well, first let me give you what happened on the stock exchange since we've been talking about this. All the stock for all the media corporations that we've discussed, including the Inquirer Star Group, has gone up. So it shows that somebody may be doing a little anticipatory buying out there, or it could just be an accident. The stock that we're going to purchase closed today on the New York Stock Exchange at $51 5/8 per share. That's $51 5/8 per share. The name of the corporation is the Gannett Company Incorporated. Seek out the lowest commissioned broker in your area, ladies and gentlemen. Buy as much stock in that company as you possibly can. The New York Stock Exchange symbol is GCI. GCI. Again, it's Gannett Company Incorporated. You want to make sure to tell your broker that you want to purchase only voting shares. Only voting shares. Do not buy stock unless the stock is voting shares. Make sure that you understand that perfectly. As soon as you've purchased your stock, make Xerox copies of your stock certificates. Make sure your broker knows to issue the certificates in your name. That way you know that you own the stock, you have the shares in your possession. Make Xerox copies of the shares, send them to us with a stamped, self-addressed number 10 envelope. We will send you back a proxy statement, which you will need to fill out, have notarized, and send back to us, giving us the proxy vote for your shares of stock. So, folks, you can get started on that tomorrow morning. We will be keeping you updated. We'll tell you if stock starts going up too precipitous, we'll tell you to hold off and until it comes back down. But this is not going to take a week or two. It's going to take us some time to do it. You need to motivate your neighbors, your friends. You need to get them involved. You need to make them understand what we're doing. And tell them if they're going to get in here and play games with us, in other words, if they're not going to go along with our scheme here to change this corporation around, then don't play at all, because we don't need 6 or 8 or 10 bunch of patriots in here buying shares and giving their proxies to 6 or 8 different people. If they do that, all we're doing, folks, is masturbating, and it's absolutely non-productive. Maybe a lot of fun. Everybody can say, oh, I'm really participating, but it's not going to amount to anything, ladies and gentlemen. So make sure you understand that. Either participate and go along with what we intend to do so that we'll have the power of a large block of voting stock owned by citizens of this country who are sick and tired of what the news media has been doing to us, and can turn this corporation around and make it work in our best interest, or get the hell out of town and don't interfere with what we're doing. Please. Okay, folks, make sure that you're in a chair, you're comfortable, you got your mind open, you got a pad of paper and a pencil by your side, because we're going to spread some light in some dark corners. Visitors to New York City who venture in to the large building known as the United Nations are amazed to find that there is a meditation room. The meditation room, ladies and gentlemen, is 30 feet long, 18 feet wide at the entrance, which faces north-northeast, and 9 feet wide at the other end. It is, therefore, wedge-shaped. Its only entrance is through 2 tinted glass paned doors, outside of which stands a United Nations guard. Inside the room is another guard. Once through the doors, the visitor finds himself in a darkened corridor which leads to the left. The sharp transition from a world of light to one of extreme darkness forces a feeling of abrupt withdrawal from the outside world upon the senses of the visitor, who walks along the corridor, reaches the inner arched entrance, turns right, and then looks into the room. The room is very dimly lit. The only source of light at first glance is that which is reflected squarely from the gleaming upper surface of the brooding, somber altar in the center of the room. A special lens recessed in the ceiling focuses a beam of light on the altar from a point above and just beyond its far edge. Thin lines of bluish light lap the edges of the shadow cast by the altar. The acoustical properties of the room are unique. The edges of padding material behind the paneling on the walls can be detected at the ceiling level. This absorbs sound, as does the Swedish woven blue rug which covers the floor of the corridor and the back of the room. The room is as quiet as an underground tomb. Its floor is paved with blue-gray slate slabs laid in a haphazard pattern. At the edge of the rug are 2 very low railings extending out from the east and west walls of the room. The center space between the railings is some 6 feet in width. To the right of the inner entrance are 10 low wicker benches arranged in 2 rows of 3 and 1 back row of 4 against the corridor wall. Attempts by visitors to pass the railings are discouraged by the guard. The mural is a fresco which was painted originally on wet plaster, 1 section at a time, by the artist, with the aid of an expert in this work brought from Europe. It is set into a steel-framed narrow panel projected from the wall, behind which is an enclosed area, some 6 inches deep, which has its own light source. A small square projector set close against the front base of the altar throws a diffused beam of light from a recessed aperture upon the surface of the mural. There are also 10 hidden lights, 5 on each side of the room, behind the upper edges of a thin suspended ceiling which extends out over the room from the top of the mural. The 18-inch space between the 2 ceilings contains the light control apparatuses. The lower ceiling is wedge-shaped and separated from 3 walls of the inner room by a foot-wide space. Thus the room appears to be much longer than it really is, because of the many converging lines leading into the narrow end, the corners of which are rounded off on either side of the mural. The altar is 4 feet high and rests on 2 narrow cross pieces. It is a dark gray block of crystalline iron ore from a Swedish mine and weighs 6½ tons. The Swedish government presented this block of ore, the largest of its kind ever mined, to the United Nations in early 1957. The chunk rests on a concrete pillar that goes straight down to bedrock. The area and passageway beneath the room are closed to the public. The chunk of ore has been described as a lodestone or magnetite, which is strongly magnetic and which possesses polarity. In northern Sweden are what may be the largest magnetite deposits in the world, believed to have been formed by segregation in the magma. Magma is the term for molten material held in solution under the pressure of the Earth's crust. The fresco mural was described in the United Nations Review of January 1958 as having been designed, quote, to conform with the purity of line and color sought for what Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld has called a room of stillness, unquote. It was painted predominantly in shades of grays and blues, but includes yellow and white patterns and a black half sphere. Light, pure colors intersect to form deeper shades. The New York Times described the fresco as being 8 feet 8 inches in height and 6 feet 8 inches in width, more brightly illuminated at the top than at the bottom. Bo Beskow, an old friend of Dag Hammarskjöld, painted the mural. Quote, Dag had me start sketches on this last summer, unquote, he said. Quote, he wanted me to do the actual work right here in the room, so I have been here since October 6th, 1957, unquote. The mural was seen for the first time, ladies and gentlemen, on November the 11th, 1957. During the period of the remodeling, the guards were on hand during the day to keep out the curious, and at night the room was locked up with a chain and padlock. The artist said of his work, quote, it has no title, and you can make what you wish of it, unquote. He explained that the geometric patterns in the mural repeated the proportions of the room, and those of the focal point of the room, the piece of iron ore. He also said that he intended to give a feeling of space with the picture. The United Nations Review story stated that, quote, he sought to open up the room so that the eye can travel in the distance when it strikes the wall. To give a slight upward movement, he said he designed winding circles in a spiraling diagonal line which might be compared to a vibrating musical chord. As a resting spot for the viewer's eyes, he provided one spot of black amid the light colors, a half circle at which all lines of the fresco and the room converge. In the New Yorker story cited earlier, Beskow was quoted as saying, quote, my fresco contained no intentional symbols, though I've heard people say that the black and pale blue circle in the upper middle section of the panel stands for the cosmos. All that I seriously sought to do was to open up the wall in order to let the eye travel farther, and to open up the mind, provoking meditation, but not directing it, unquote. The mystic P.D. Ouspensky has written that in, quote, real art nothing is accidental, it is mathematics. Everything in it can be calculated. Everything can be known beforehand. The artist knows and understands what he wants to convey, and his work cannot produce one impression on one man and another impression on another, presuming, of course, they are people on one level. At the same time, the same work of art will produce different impressions on people of different levels, and people from lower levels will never receive from it what people of higher levels receive. This is real objective art. An objective work of art affects the emotional and not only the intellectual side of man, unquote. Mr. Beskow's picture is described as non-objective, yet its composition admittedly reflects the dimensions of the room and the chunk of iron ore. This, ladies and gentlemen, involves mathematics. He said of his mural, quote, you can make what you wish of it, unquote, yet he admittedly sought to create a specific subjective effect in the mind of the spectator. Consequently, Mr. Beskow's remarks create confusion rather than understanding. The leaflet made available to those who visit the meditation room was written under the direction of Dag Hammarskjöld himself. Its description of the room is deliberately couched in abstruse language. It contains terms which have meaning to the esoterically inclined, but not to the uninitiated, or those called the profane. These terms will be explained, and have in fact been explained, during the Mystery Babylon segments of the Hour of the Time. But for those who may be just beginning to listen to this program, esoteric means that which is hidden and is kept only for the initiated, those who have studied the mysteries. The profane, ladies and gentlemen, is you. I leave myself out because during the process of studying the mysteries, I, with great irony, have become illumined. And if you continue to listen to the Hour of the Time, so shall you. The leaflet reads, quote, "We all have within us a center of stillness surrounded by silence. People of many faiths will meet here, and for that reason none of the symbols to which we are accustomed in our meditation could be used. However, there are simple things which speak to us all with the same language. We have sought for such things, and we believe that we have found them in the shaft of light striking the shimmering surface of solid rock. So in the middle of the room, we see a symbol of how daily the light of the skies gives life to the earth on which we stand, a symbol to many of us of how the light of the Spirit gives life to matter. But the stone in the middle of the room has more to tell us. We may see it as an altar, empty not because there is no God, not because it is an altar to an unknown God, but because it is dedicated to the God whom man worships under many names and in many forms. The stone in the middle of the room reminds us also of the firm and permanent in a world of movement and change. The block of iron ore has the weight and solidity of the everlasting. It is a reminder of that cornerstone of endurance and faith on which all human endeavor must be based. The material of the stone leads our thoughts to the necessity for choice between destruction and peace. Of iron man has forged his swords, of iron he has also made his plowshares. The shaft of light strikes the stone in a room of utter simplicity. When our eyes travel from these symbols to the front wall, they meet a simple pattern, opening up the room to the harmony, freedom, and balance of space. There is an ancient Chinese saying that the sense of a vessel is not in its shell, but in the void. So it is with this room. It is for those who come here to fill the void with what they find in their center of stillness." Unquote. The World Goodwill Bulletin is published by Lucis Press Limited, owned by Lucis Trust, at 88 Edgware Road, Marble Arch, London, W2, England. The New York branch, the Lucis Publishing Company, 11 West 42nd Street, 32nd floor, issues materials on its arcane school, 3-member triangles and World Service Fund, and publishes the Beacon magazine. This company, ladies and gentlemen, was originally established as the Lucifer Publishing Company, but changed its name on November the 11th, 1924, to the less startling one it bears today. A third branch of the Lucis Trust is located at 1 Rue de Verembe 3E, Geneva, Switzerland. Alice A. Bailey, the now deceased High Priestess of the Occult Arcane School, established and headed the Trust and its self-identified Society of Illumined Minds. This powerful group has intimate connections with the United Nations. The World Goodwill Bulletin issued a special edition on the United Nations in July 1957, which contained an article entitled, quote, "Lodestone," unquote. We quote from its description of the meditation room. Quote, "The visitor will be totally unprepared for what he will see as he steps in the door for a moment of quiet. Because of the converging walls and the dim light, he will experience a peculiar spatial disorientation, and dimension and perspective will seem difficult to establish. In the center of the room, he will see illuminated by a single point of light from the ceiling, a rectangular mass. The ore piece is many millions of years old. One feels as though one is in a repository for some natural talisman of significant and noble importance, rather than in a chapel in the ordinary sense. Those who are wedded to seeking communion in traditional settings may be somewhat ill at ease here. This is a sudden break with prior experience. One is thrown violently upon his own resources. The room and the concept do not seem indicative of the supplications or the dualistic concept of the mystic in which illumination is sought as a boon granted by deity. Rather, seemingly inherent in the decoration of the room, in the pinpoint of light playing on the ore, is the concept of a personal concentration of forces, creating a focus that illumines the field of attention. The pinpoint of light, the void of space, the illuminated crystalline ore, one feels projected into a setting of cosmological symbolism rather than one of planetary or even solar intent. It is interesting to speculate on what the long-term influence of this new departure will be on current religious thinking. Ensconced here in the highest hall of man, it cannot be inconsiderable. Whatever interpretations one may attribute to the United Nations Meditation Room, it can be said with certainty that the words and the repercussions have only just begun, unquote. Folks, the new departure in religion referred to did not occur by chance. Tremendous pressure was brought to bear on Triglav and Dag Hammarskjöld to install such a room at the United Nations by such organizations as the World Council of Churches. Triglav announced on April 18, 1949, that such a room would be established. The Fifth General Assembly opened with 1 minute of silence as a religious observance. Shortly thereafter, a temporary meditation room was provided at Lake Success, New York. On February 9, 1951, a meditation room was opened for 1 day at the United Nations Secretariat building. Then on October 14, 1952, the opening day of the Seventh General Assembly, a permanent meditation room was made available to the public. Since then, each assembly has opened with 1 minute of silence. In 1955, the meditation room contained a 300-year-old, 800-pound, 37-inch wide upright section of an agba, or mahogany tree, from French Equatorial Africa. It was the idea of Wallace Harrison, director of the International Board of Architects, which planned the United Nations, co-architect and director of Rockefeller Center, and member of the board of directors of the Socialist New School of Social Research in New York City. See Who's Who in America for 1959 for reference. The room contained a philodendron plant on the altar to symbolize some unknown person killed in a war, an olive green rug, 25 russet-colored chairs, and a blue and white United Nations banner set in front of a ceiling-to-floor white drape. On February 16, 1953, a group known as the Friends of the Meditation Room, numbering 1,500 members, presented through its officers a set of guest books to the United Nations, wherein visitors to the room could inscribe their names, addresses, and religious affiliations. Since then, many, many millions have been estimated by the United Nations to have entered the room. Of these visitors, millions have signed these books, each containing 7,000 names. What purpose, ladies and gentlemen, is served by the accumulation of these thousands of names of individuals with their religious affiliations who visit the room, and who by the act of signing their names indicate that they do not object to the existence of this pagan temple? The Friends are a product of the non-sectarian layman's movement for a Christian World Incorporated, the international headquarters of which is located at Wainwright House, Milton Point, Rye, New York. Warren R. Austin, a past permanent United States delegate to the United Nations, headed a Friends committee which presented $12,600 to Dag Hammarskjöld on April 24, 1957, as first payment on $25,000 needed to remodel and enlarge the room. The movement has issued United Nations Meditation Room identification cards to 300 men and women who go periodically to this room for prayer. It once issued prayer cards to visitors containing prayers from the, quote, world's great living religions, unquote, namely Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Islamism, Sikhism, Christianity, and St. Francis of Assisi. I was not aware that St. Francis of Assisi was one of the world's great religions. Were you? The Friends held vigils of prayer in the room in 1953 and 1954. Back in 1946, the movement had sent Dr. Frank Laubach, Union Theological Seminary graduate and author of, quote, Letters of a Modern Mystic, unquote, to the Paris Peace Conference to lobby for the establishment of the meditation room. Speakers for the movement's meetings have included Norman Cousins, Ralph Bunche, and Frank P. Graham of the United Nations, and William Ernest Hocking and Curtly F. Mather of Harvard, all of whom have Communist Front records. See the May, June, and July-August 1959 and July-August 1962 issues of the Layman's Movement Review. The movement has included among its members Dwight David Eisenhower. The most important friend of the movement from its inception, however, has been John D. Rockefeller, Jr., a Methodist missionary, Wayman C. Huckabee, secured and received grants from John D. Rockefeller, Jr.'s Davison Fund and from his New York City Riverside Church funds for 5 consecutive years, 1937 through 1941, for a health center in Hiroshima, Japan. Huckabee then became the secretary of the movement in New York in 1941 and secured 2 grants a year for the organization from the Davison Fund until it was liquidated. It is not coincidence, ladies and gentlemen, that the funds John D. Rockefeller Jr.'s Davison Fund and from his New York City Riverside Church funds for the years 1937 to 1941 were for the health center in Hiroshima, Japan, a city which we ultimately dropped an atomic weapon. Rockefeller, ladies and gentlemen, continued his yearly grants without fail from his own personal funds. During the 22 years Huckabee remained with the movement, $1 million was raised for its work. When the movement first sought to secure Wainwright House for its headquarters in 1951, John D. Rockefeller, Jr. gave $5,000 of the $25,000 needed. Since 1951, 10,000 individuals have signed the guest book of Wainwright House. 5,000 have attended its public meetings. Its members have been addressed by the President of the National Council of Churches. Its conference rooms have been used by the Episcopal, Presbyterian, Methodist, Baptist, Congregationalist, and Quaker churches. When the Friends of the Meditation Room agreed to raise $15,000 to pay for the redecoration of the room, John D. Rockefeller, Jr. gave $5,000 of the amount sought. Dag Hammarskjöld personally raised another $10,000 from the Marshall Field family for the cost of the fresco in the room. The United Steelworkers, AFL-CIO, gave $500. The movement was formed, ladies and gentlemen, in 1940. The man who started it was Dr. Arthur Compton, the scientist who first brought the identified communist and accused agent espionage Professor J. Robert Oppenheimer into the Atomic Energy Project in 1942. Wainwright House has its own meditation room on its second floor. The room contains the Agba wood altar first used in the UN meditation room and the cherry wood chairs and drapes from that room presented to the Friends by the United Nations in 1957. The house also contains a large library centered around the Thomas Sugru Memorial Library, a $1,600 collection of books on religion and occultism, where one may read up on spiritualism, Zen, Taoism, yoga, Judaism, etc. Every book in the library has a bookplate therein designed by the artist Fritz Eichenberg. His bookplate depicts the ancient cross in the shape of a T, surrounded by a serpent symbolizing wisdom and healing and forming the letter S. The T and S, Thomas Sugrew's initials, are crowned by the lotus, Vedantic representation of all being. In the background lies the city of Jerusalem, over which shine two stars, the star of the east of Christianity and six-pointed star of Judaism. A flame spreads an arc of light above, proclaiming the continuity of life and the immortality of the soul. M. Oldfield Howey tells us in The Encircled Serpent that in the symbolism of Egypt, the serpent is constantly represented as surmounting a cross. The brazen serpent was a palladium or talisman in the form of a serpent coiled around the mystic Tau or T. The serpent set up by Moses was originally the Egyptian sun god who was now known to his people as Jehovah. Unquote. Joseph von Hammer, in the History of the Assassins, explains the Tau as the figure of the phallus. Quote, among the Egyptians, the lotus was the symbol of Osiris and Isis. It was esteemed a sacred ornament by the priests. The six-pointed star is the great oriental talisman known as the Seal of Solomon. Its meaning, ladies and gentlemen, and the identity of Osiris and Isis has already been explained in past episodes of the Hour of the Time. It will also be explained on a later edition of the Hour of the Time when we discuss the Great Seal of the United States of America. The arc of light on the bookplate is the Ein Sof from the Kabbalistic writings, or mystical theosophy, which teach that it created the world by virtue of 10 emanations from the Infinite One. The emanations, or Sephiroth, are arranged into a form called the Tree of Life, which in turn is vertically composed of 3 pillars. C.W. King, in his Gnostics, states that the 2 outer pillars figure largely amongst all the secret societies of modern times. And naturally so, for these Illuminati have borrowed without understanding it the phraseology of the Kabbalists. Dag Hammarskjöld called the altar a reminder of that, quote, cornerstone on which all human endeavor must be based, unquote. The meditation room faces north-northeast. To enter the room, one must proceed from darkness to light. From darkness to light. With these facts in mind, note the Kabbalistic symbolism of the following description of the cornerstone by an authority. Quote, in its situation, it lies between the north, the place of darkness, and the east, the place of light. And hence this position symbolizes progress from darkness to light and from ignorance to knowledge. The permanence and durability of the cornerstone is intended to remind us that long after our death we have within ourselves a sure foundation of eternal life, a cornerstone of immortality and emanation, which pervades all nature and which therefore must survive the tomb. Unquote. On a higher level of esoteric knowledge, the metal altar or stone can be likened to the ancient stone of foundation, which according to the same authority cited above was supposed, quote, to have been placed at one time within the foundations of the Temple of Solomon, and afterwards, during the building of the second temple, transported to the Holy of Holies. It was in the form of a perfect cube, or as the Freemasons call it, ashlar, and had inscribed upon its upper face within a delta or triangle the sacred tetragrammaton or ineffable name of God. In a scurrilous book of the Middle Ages, The Life of Jesus, there was another account of the stone. Quote, at that time there was in the temple the ineffable name of God inscribed upon the stone of foundation. Unquote. This scandalous book proceeded to state that our Savior, quote, cunningly obtained a knowledge of the tetragrammaton from the stone of foundation, and by its mystical influence was enabled to perform his miracles. There was a very general prevalence among the earliest nations of antiquity of the worship of stones as the representative of deity, and in England the Queen sits upon a throne under which is a stone. This happens in almost every ancient temple, and in every ancient temple there was a legend of a sacred or mystical stone. The mystical stone there has received the name of the, quote, stone of foundation, unquote. And the scribes who had come down from Jerusalem said, quote, he has Beelzebub, and by the prince of devils he casts out devils, unquote. Alfred Edward Waite, in his study of the Zohar, the Kabbalistic textbook of the 14th century, entitled The Secret Doctrine of Israel, wrote on page 62 of a, quote, mysterious stone called Shathia, unquote, which was cast by Jehovah into the abyss, so to form the basis of the world and give birth thereto. One might say otherwise, that it was like a cubical stone or altar, for its extremity was concealed in the depth, while its surface or summit rose above the chaos. It was the central point in the immensity of the world, the cornerstone, the tried stone, the sure foundation, but also that stone which the builders rejected, unquote. And where have we heard that before? Well, folks, nowhere else but in the teachings of Freemasonry. But what really, in the Christian meaning, is the cornerstone? Isaiah said, quote, therefore thus saith the Lord God, behold, I will lay a stone in the foundations of Sion, a tried stone, a cornerstone, a precious stone, founded in the foundation. He that believeth, let him not hasten, unquote. The cornerstone is Jesus Christ, quote, the stone which the builders rejected, unquote. One need go no further than the inner entrance of the meditation room to see concrete evidence of the godlessness of the United Nations. That word sticks in my throat, godlessness. The stone, the metal altar, in its stark setting in that room, is in itself a symbol of idolatry. Quote, stone worship was perhaps the earliest form of fetishism. Eusebius cites Porphyry as saying that the ancients represented the deity by a black stone because his nature is obscure and inscrutable. The reader here will be reminded of the black stone, Hajar el-Aswad, placed in the southwest corner of the Kaaba at Mecca, which is worshipped by the ancient Arabians. The Druids, it is well known, had no other images of their gods but cubical or sometimes columnar stones. To use the language of Dudley, the pillar or stone was adapted as a symbol of strength and firmness, a symbol also of the divine power, and by a ready inference a symbol or idol of the deity himself. The god Hermes, or Mercury, was represented without hands or feet, being a cubical stone, because the cubical figure betokened his solidity and stability, unquote. Hammarskjöld, in the speech quoted earlier, said, quote, in this case, we wanted this massive altar to give the impression of something more than temporary. We had another idea. We thought we could bless by our thoughts the very material out of which arms are made. The description of the altar as a natural talisman by the World Goodwill Group also is significant. Talisman is a term which means a stone or other object engraven with figures or characters to which is attributed the occult powers of the planetary influences and celestial configurations under which it was made. Altars among the ancients were generally made of turf or stone, usually in a cubical form. Altars were erected long before temples. The shaft of light upon the altar in the meditation room casts a shadow to the north. The use of the north as a symbol of darkness, a portion of the old sun worship, of which we find so many relics in Gnosticism, in Hermetic philosophy, in Freemasonry, in the temples of all of the secret societies which exist in a membership in the shape of a pyramid, with a whole bunch of slathering idiots thirsting after the secrets which they will never know, and a few at the top who really understand that the only secret is how to control those on the bottom. The east was the place of the sun's daily birth, and hence highly revered. The north, the place of his annual death. Finally, it must be emphasized above all that the altar in the meditation room is unsanctified and unhallowed. It has no sacred meaning, can inspire no reverence, and is not inviolable. This altar cannot be used for sacrifice in any other than an unholy sense. Ladies and gentlemen, one clue to the mural's symbolism is given in Hammarskjöld's and Beskows' description of its purpose. It was to open up the wall, to give a feeling of space, of the void, in effect, to extend the room further out into another dimension, as it were. The Friends leaflet, A Call to Prayer, states the theme of the mural is, quote, infinity, unquote. Now let us look at this mural squarely from the viewpoint of the esoterically inclined, the occultist, the adept, the initiate. There is an asymmetrical arrangement of the entire mural into what is called a magic square, which is a square arranged in an equal number of cells, in this case 9, 3 rows up and 3 rows down. The game tic-tac-toe is based on this type of square. The talismanic magic square has a series of numbers in the cells, the enumeration of all of whose columns, vertically, horizontally, and diagonally, will give the same sum. The following 9 digits, so arranged as to add up to 15 in any direction, were regarded as sacred because 15 is the numerical value of the Hebrew word for God, Yah, spelled J-A-H, which is one of the forms of the tetragrammaton. And in the rows, going across from left to right in each row, the first row, the numbers are 4, 9, and 2. In the second row, the numbers are 3, 5, and 7. And in the third row, the numbers are 8, 1, and 6. Whether you add them up diagonally, vertically, or horizontally, no matter in which direction you go, it always adds up to the number 15. The predominantly dark blue rectangle, which occupies most of the middle tier of the mural, the upper side of which passes through the exact middle of the small bisected sphere, represents the altar. The yellow rectangle, set at an angle into the lower and middle tiers so that one corner touches the bottom of the mural, is a second representation of the altar. They indicate, ladies and gentlemen, duality. Remember the yin and the yang, positive, negative, male, female, the androgynous God, the yellow figure, light, the sun, the blue figure, earth, the altar. Both rectangular figures are overlaid in part by other patterns in other colors. The all-important sphere in the left upper middle section symbolizes, among other things, the sun. Sun worship was the oldest and by far the most prevalent of all the ancient religions. The sphere is bisected and quartered, the phenomena of nature that made the deepest religious impression on archaic man were the outstretched heavens above him and the outspread earth beneath, both of which he naturally divided into 4 quarters. This fourfold heaven and earth he signified by a circle, or a square divided crossways. The circle, ladies and gentlemen, is met with in every form of sorcery. The circle in quadrants is called the magic circle. The objects in the meditation room are intended to be evocative in the religious sense. Of what? Well, the mural and altar are admittedly symbols. By symbolism, the simplest, the commonest objects are transformed or idealized and acquire a new, and so to say, an illimitable value. An expert on these subjects has written, quote, "Under occult dominion art, music and politics all tend to the same end. Confusion, a calculated and inducted confusion. Chaos, for minds that are confused will obey and bow to the hidden masters, and out of chaos comes order." And isn't that the motto of the 33rd degree of Freemasonry? Ordo ab teo. Quote, "The rule of the triangle and the ellipse, together with a crude geometry in modern art, is the rule in aesthetics. Standing before a meaningless cubist canvas at an art exhibition one day, a puzzled amateur asked, quote, 'But what does it mean?' unquote, to which the painter replied, "It's not a question of what it means, it's a question of what is its effect on the observer." Consciously or unconsciously, the artist spoke the truth. Psychiatrists tell us that this school of insidious humbug is simply an elaboration of the policy of the interruption of ideas, leading to total incoherence and madness. Cubist art is an effort to produce certain psychic effects obtainable by optical illusion. Beauty has nothing to do with it. The Cubist school is not the realm of art at all. It belongs to that of medicine and psychic science. Those who forget that this devastating fad of the interrupted idea can be extended to music, literature, and every other phase of human effort do so at their own peril. For instance, listen closely to the beat of the rap musician. Quote, "A mind that is positive cannot be controlled. For the purpose of occult dominion, minds must therefore be rendered passive and negative in order that control can be conceived. Minds consciously working to a definite end are a power, and power can oppose power for good or for evil. The scheme for world dominion might be doomed by the recognition of this principle alone, but as it is unfortunately unrecognized, it remains unchallenged," unquote, until we decided to purchase a media corporation. And thus now, we have minds consciously working to a definite end, and we are now a power. A very great power. A striking feature of the mural is the white half crescent in its upper right quadrant. The inner curve of the crescent closest to the bisected black, pale blue, and yellow sphere is equidistant at all points from the exact center of the bisected figure. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, if the curve of the crescent is continued full circle, the figure which results is a hidden point within a circle, the symbol which was adopted by the astronomers as their sign of the sun, and of course you know that the crescent is the sign of the moon, Isis and Osiris. In the ancient mysteries, the point in the circle denoted the principle of fecundity and has been carried down through the ages as a sign of various secret societies, including the Illuminati of Adam Weishaupt in 1776, and you will find the dot in a circle in the temples of Freemasonry. It is the symbol of the phallus. We always come back to the generative force. The female principle is also emphasized in the crescent moon, or lunette figure of Isis. There are 72 geometrical figures and shadings in the mural. The 2 crescent shapes and the 4 long triangles, white, yellow, blue, and black, which are located in the 2 upper tiers of the mural, are each counted as one figure. The number 72 denoted from the earliest days the divine name of 72 words. 72 words. This number is derived from a permutation of the values assigned to the 4 letters of the Tetragrammaton, or JHVH, Jehovah, the ineffable, unpronounceable name of God. This name and its multitude of forms can be used to work miracles or magic, so say the Kabbalists. It was derived from Exodus chapter 14, verses 19, 20, and 21, which each consist of 72 letters. Now, if these 3 verses be written at length, one above another, the first from right to left, the second from left to right, and the third from right to left, or as the Greeks would say, boustrophedon, they will give 72 columns of 3 letters each. Then each column will be a word of 3 letters, and as there are 72 columns, there will be 72 words of 3 letters, each of which will be the 72 names of the deity alluded to in the text. And these are called the Shem Ham Pharesh. 72 is also the number of the quinaries, or sets of 5 degrees in the 360 degrees of the zodiac. The number of triangles in the mural are difficult to count. There are 22 isosceles, equilateral, scalene, right-angled triangles. There are also 22 numbered letters in the ancient Hebrew alphabet with values of 1 to 400. The triangle is an ancient emblem of the deity. It is also a sign of the female element. However, if the apex of the triangle is pointed down, it becomes the male element. Thus, inverted, it may also represent Lucifer, particularly if it is black in color. The sphere figure, or the spiral figure, intertwined with a mural-length diagonal line, symbolizes the caduceus of Hermes, or Mercury, which mythologically is represented as two serpents twined around the winged wand of Mercury. 9 arcs are formed by the intersections of the spiral line with the diagonal. The 9th Hebrew letter, Teth, with the value of 9, has the signification of serpent. The number of the beast of Revelation is 666, which Kabbalistically is 9, the number of generation. The twin serpents of the caduceus are negative and positive, representing polarity, and twine around the spinal column. They are the kundalini, or sex force. In the encircled serpent, the chapter on the caduceus contains references on page 72 to the ancient use of the symbol without wings as seen in the mural. The caduceus is also the symbol of peace, the propaganda term associated with the United Nations. The serpents are male and female, the sun god and the moon god, and are symbols of generation, or the phalos. Buddha was symbolized by the serpent, and in mythology is identical with Mercury. The center sphere and the outer circles around it form the all-seeing eye. This bisected sphere overlays an isosceles triangle bounded on one side by the diagonal line. According to Manly Palmer Hall in his occult treatise on the secret destiny of America, the all-seeing eye is that of the great architect of the universe, whenever it appears as a symbol of God. His explanation is that which is generally accepted. It is, however, erroneous. A full commentary on the meaning of this all-important symbol has already been dealt with in previous episodes of the Hour of the Time. The mural, if viewed from the top or the roof overhead of the meditation room, is the truncated top of a pyramid. Behind the mural is a smaller pyramid, which is that which contains the eye, the all-seeing eye of Lucifer. Good night, and God bless each and every single one of you.
You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper.
Good evening, folks. Tonight's episode is a rerun. Due to the great mass of bullshit poured out on Radio Freemasonry just prior to this program, we will expose this wolf in sheep's clothing in his own words.
Tonight we're going to play a portion of a program that originally aired on June the 23rd, 1993. If after hearing tonight's program you wish to order that original broadcast, it is tape number 123 in our catalog. That's tape number 123 in our catalog. We discussed this rerun a little bit last night, so you all know the subject. But you all need to hear it again, even those of you who heard it the first time that it was broadcast, and those of you, of course, who have never heard it and are struggling, attempting to understand the purpose of the Hour of the Time. We hope that this rebroadcast will bring some things into the forefront that have been lurking into the shadows, and will make some of the conversation that you've heard on the Hour of the Time much clearer. We encourage you to order the original tape from the original broadcast on June 23rd, 1993, so that you may study its content in your home. Now, without further ado, we go in to the rebroadcast of the Mystery Expose. At the end of this rerun, ladies and gentlemen, we will open the phones for your comments and questions.
Now, folks, I'm going to take you into the mind of someone who has been an initiate, an adept, a priest of the mystery school for many, many years. I'm not going to identify this person until the end of the program. I want you to see if you can guess who this person is and what this is all about. If you can, then you'll know instantly what this program is for, the reason behind it, and you'll be able to understand a little bit better how you've been manipulated for many, many years by the priests of the hidden religion called Mystery Babylon. And if you can't guess, then at the end of the show, you're going to be told, and you better be holding on to your chair because it just might knock you right out. Just might knock you right out. I'm going to quote from a book that this person wrote. This person verified something that I wrote in my book, Behold a Pale Horse, and that is the calendar of the hidden religion of Mystery Babylon. It's 6,000 years, and it started in 4000 BC and ends in the year 2000. Quote, "The Great Pyramid system of passages and chambers is a chronological graph that begins in 4000 BC and continues for 6,000 years." Unquote. Now, let's go to an interview that was conducted with this person by someone else, not by me. But I'm going to be reading to you word for word this entire interview, and this is going to take up most of the program, but this is going to give you a glimpse into the personality, the religious beliefs of the priests of the mystery religion, and you'll see sort of how they try to disguise what they really believe behind this aura of wanting to further the evolution of mankind and create some kind of a world utopia which they know in their heart is a lie to begin with. So, I'm going to call these number 1 and number 2. Number 1 is the interviewer. Number 2 is the interviewee. Number 1, how did you become interested in the Great Pyramid? Number 2, well, like everyone else, for most of my life, I accepted the idea that the Great Pyramid was just a great big pile of stone made by thousands and thousands of slaves. But I read a book in 1967 called The Ultimate Frontier. That book profoundly affected my life. In it, they made statements about the Great Pyramid being much more than a tomb, when in fact it never was a tomb for a pharaoh. It is a monument to mankind and human perfection. It is the oldest artifact of an ancient system of religious belief. Then I thought, that's something I can check out. I can see if the information in the Ultimate Frontier is true or not. I started investigating. I then learned a great number of things about the Great Pyramid. First of all, the ancient Greeks were quite right in calling it the first wonder of the world. When one considers the thought, preparation, and choice of site, one will see that the solid bedrock of the Giza Plateau, the only tableland within miles capable of supporting the weight of the structure, was the most intelligent choice. There is a fantastic amount of literature about the Great Pyramid. Therefore, it is not unusual that we also find a great deal of controversy surrounding it. The British in the 1860s were the first to study the ancient building in a serious manner. By re-examining the theories of the British, which were discarded by the experts of that time, the crux of my book began to take shape. Number 1. Does the crux of your book include the fact that the Great Pyramid may not have been built by the ancient Egyptians? Number 2. Yes. The British did not discuss that possibility. That possibility is my own bit of research. However, most people who study the Great Pyramid realize that the civilization we know as ancient Egyptian could not have built the Great Pyramid the way we know today. It would have had to have been built. You see, the building is built geometrically perfect, and according to our present conception of ancient history, the Egyptians didn't understand highly theoretical mathematics, obviously, from the way the other 89 major pyramids in Egypt were constructed. The manner in which the other pyramids were constructed was a very haphazard way of building. They are copies of the Great Pyramid. The Great Pyramid itself is, however, absolute perfection in stone, both to the pi relationship, the relationship of a diameter to the circumference of a circle, and the golden mean are phi relationship, with which we can divide a straight line so that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. The reason why it was structured is embodied in the word itself, pyramid, which means lights and measures. that there are revelation types of lights. The word for pyramid used by the ancient Egyptians was glorious light. And the word has meaning that there are revelations in the measurements. If you pursue this hint, so to speak, you find out that the builders of the Great Pyramid are the same people that wrote the original text of the Old Testament, and they laid out their plan in the Great Pyramid as well as in the Scriptures. I hope, folks, you understand the significance of that one statement, and there's much, much more to come. Number one, who are these people? Number two, my opinion is they were what we call hexos, or hyksos, and we find traces of them throughout Mesoamerica, India, and the Middle East, in the earliest of times. The Egyptians had 2 or 3 different ways of hyksos rulers come in. The word hyksos for many years was translated shepherd kings, which is a paradox. You see, looking at life the way we look at it today, how could a group who were non-warlike come into a land and take over and run things without any fighting? Yet they obviously did, and these ancient builders had a profound influence wherever they went. The years of research I've done tell me that the hyksos were a group of people who had in their culture information stemming from a previous civilization. I think that our view of history, saying that it started in the cradle of civilization in Egypt and Mesopotamia, is wrong. The surviving evidence indicates both Egypt and Mesopotamia are actually later civilizations, remnants of a far, far greater early empire. And here, folks, we see in this person's philosophy the same philosophy that Hitler pursued. The myth of ancient Atlantis, or Mu, if you will, an ancient civilization, which, when it was destroyed, left behind a remnant, a surviving element of that race, which is a super race, more intelligent, smarter, more worthy than any other race on this earth, if you will, the master race. If you understand the esoteric meaning of what you're hearing, you are hearing Nazi philosophy, National Socialism, Hitler's vision of world history. And when you find out who this person is and what he's doing now, it will all come together. We continue. Number one, do you think the Hyksos race was a race chosen by some greater intelligence to impart a superior ideology to the rest of the human race? Number two, not so much chose, but actually chose themselves. All genius is self-appointed. I would say these people were a remnant from a previous culture, and they had something they wanted to do, and they embodied their thinking in their work, and they influenced people by their works. Folks, that's the Luciferian philosophy. Continuing. They came into the land, and there were already humans in the Nile Valley. But they came into the land in an unobtrusive and dexterous maneuver so as not to alarm the existing culture. They came in without fighting. They took the worst land. They didn't try to impress their knowledge on the others. They just did things in a better way. Soon the people in that area were paying attention to them. Once they gained the attention of the people, it didn't take very long before they were running everything, because they did everything with better methodology, which is the way life ought to be. You ought to show by example. Number one, what happened then? Number two, fairly soon after arriving, they suggested to the people that as life was now so peaceful and harmonious, it would be a happy challenge to build a monument to the future of mankind. In my opinion, the Hyksos philosophy and the philosophy of many modern people is identical in that human beings can be perfect if they work toward that end, and that is the heart and soul philosophy of Mystery Babylon, the mystery schools, that man himself will become God. Wait until you find out who this is. Number one, what happened to the ancient tribe, the Hyksos? Number two, I think they are still in existence today and have not died out, but have gone underground many thousands of years ago. What we call masonry, Freemasonry is an offshoot of the group that started out. The Hyksos group became what the Ultimate Frontier calls the Brotherhoods. These are a group of people who have knowledge about what it really means to be human. And folks, that implies that the rest of us are not, and that also is in direct line and in direct concert with the philosophy of the mystery religion of Babylon. You see, to them we are all cattle, animals who have no intelligence. Continuing, these are a group of people who have knowledge about what it really means to be human, to be a human becoming, to grow toward human perfection. It's a philosophical thing. These people still exist. They still band together in groups here and there, and they show by doing. Again, their lifestyle shows that they really have a handle on what life is all about. They don't try to impress others with numbers or with what they know. They just live doing something they want to accomplish while they are here. We know in Egypt these people formed secret societies, and that Pharaoh Akhenaten came up, quote, under the rose, unquote, out of one of these secret societies and took over the land of Egypt in a manner that forbids disclosure at a time in which the superficial popular theology left a want unsatisfied, which religion in a wider sense alone could supply. And there he has admitted that he knows the esoteric teachings of the mystery schools, their origin and their purpose. And if you've been listening from the beginning, now you know that this person is a priest of the mystery religion himself. Continuing, we know Alexander the Great wanted to get the knowledge of one of these ancient secret societies because he writes about it a great deal. Pythagoras consented to be circumcised in order to become one of the initiates of these secret societies, which are the Hyksos population carrying their knowledge of science and the universe and cosmology with them and keeping the truth secret so they wouldn't be persecuted and wiped out. You can imagine what society today would do to a group of people like this, were they to perform certain ancient rituals in public. Look what they did to Akhenaten. As soon as he was dead, they destroyed the city he built. Number one. That's right, they tried to. Number two, wipe out his name. Number one, yes, because he taught there was only one God. Number two, the human tendency in the mass populace. Number one, when you use the term mass populace, are you referring to a group of people who have become undeveloped on account of a too pleasant or a too severe climate, or even from physiological or psychological causes? Number two, the phrase mass populace was a term used by the ancient ones, which usually refers to those in a populace, any populace, in any country, who sit back waiting for some savior to raise them up out of their misery. Recognize the venom directed at Christianity, folks? Number one, then you are referring to people who are merely living a conditioned response to their environment. Number two, yes, the human tendency in the mass populace is to tear things down rather than to reach up to the excellent, which brings everything down to mediocrity. We're doing that in this country today with our so-called standards from the federal government. Everything's got to be brought down. This is just another social indication of this tendency in human beings to bring things down to a lower level, so it's easier instead of striving for excellence. The Hyksos people went after pleasing results and worked hard in this manner. They strove for excellence, and therefore they had to go underground to keep from being persecuted. In almost every case that we can trace, anyone that tried to bring the truth to man has been crucified or killed in some cruel or barbarous human ritual. And folks, for many years, that was exactly true. But this is not the true intent of these people, for if you also go back through history, you'll find that these are the people who have been behind every religious war, have been behind every revolution, have been behind and literally are the heart and soul of socialism and communism. And everywhere they go, death follows and a stench. Number one, do you know how the Great Pyramid was constructed? Number two, I leave that puzzle to the engineers, architects, and professors of physics who have researched and studied the building. No one at the present really knows. There are several suppositions, but since no one really knows, that mystery remains to be answered in the next 24 years, and since no one really knows, in my opinion, there's no such thing as an expert. Number one, in that case, how do you believe the Great Pyramid may have been constructed? Number two, my information from people who seem very knowledgeable says that they built in with water locks and floated the blocks into place. That's pretty hard to conceive of because they would have had to have been tremendous locks, because the Great Pyramid is up on a plateau at least 6 miles from the banks of the Nile River. Water with a series of basins and pipes that match the corridor and the chamber system of the Great Pyramid's interior system embodies all the laws of hydraulic engineering. For example, the Great Pyramid's Grand Gallery is a perfect vacuum bottle. And this pumping system, which I explain in my book as I explore the research work of Edward J. Kunkel, author of the book Pharaoh's Pump. Well, folks, it's time to take our break. Don't go away. We'll be right back and continue with this revelation after this very short pause. And we continue, folks. Number one, if this tribe of people, the Hyksos, caused the Great Pyramid to be constructed, did they know their message wouldn't be understood for thousands of years, or did they think that humans would grasp its meaning a little bit before that? Number two, I think it's quite apparent that they knew it would be grasped in the 20th century. I think that they laid it out so the core of their meaning would be picked up by those who really had the mathematical know-how. It wasn't until 1905 that we had the real understanding of gravitational astronomy, the astronomy involving the solar system and the movement of the Earth around the Sun, down so pat that we had all the answers the builders of the Great Pyramid had. They knew as much or more about today's system of gravitational astronomy as we knew. Number one, do you think this falls in line with a number of other theories that humans were at one time visited by supremely intelligent beings from other worlds? Number two, I don't accept that thesis. However, I believe that there is life probably on every little planetoid in the entire universe, life that is similar to ours, having a spiritual nature but somewhat different in physical nature. No other beings from outer space ever came down here and cohabited with the apes, as Mr. von Daniken would say. I would reject that thesis, but on the other hand, I would say we are indeed created by another intelligence far greater than this planet or even this solar system. You know, it's a funny thing. I was once an atheist. I went through most of my college days as an atheist. I went through most of my college days as an anthropologist and didn't believe in a creative theory at all. But after studying for many years, I was forced to accept the fact that I obviously had been created because it just didn't happen by chance. There's no way, I would say, that this theory that something in outer space came down and interfered is quite accurate in that respect. We are in the image of a creator of some kind that we can't even conceive. Therefore, we have the ability to do all kinds of fantastic things. I think there was a civilization 50,000 years ago in the Pacific, now underwater, that had in it achievements that we only think of today. Number one. Okay, just a minute. Let me backtrack here. At the beginning of the interview, you mentioned that you began your investigation of the Great Pyramid after you read The Ultimate Frontier. What's it all about? Number two. Oh, that's a big topic. The Ultimate Frontier ties together a history of this planet, the idea and purpose for mankind being a part of it, and a philosophy of growth towards human perfection, and how this philosophy is what life is really all about. The truth of this was lost when the great civilization on the Pacific continent of Mu was destroyed by a sudden cataclysmic change on the crust of the earth 50,000 years ago. There are a group of individuals who call themselves the Brotherhoods, unobtrusively working to uplift mankind back to this ancient wisdom belief, and the Great Pyramid is indeed a monument to this particular brotherhood. Number one, perhaps the truth is never lost. Perhaps as we evolve towards a true understanding of essentials, we suddenly find ourselves faced with a question where we discover that we have really understood nothing at all, and consequently have to begin learning all over again on a new and higher level. Perhaps the memory of the destruction of Mu and other catastrophic events is contained in the collective unconsciousness of man. Perhaps some humans, direct genetic descendants of the survivors of these cataclysmic events, carry in their bloodline a genetic mutation. Let me read that portion again, folks. Perhaps some humans, direct genetic descendants of the survivors of these cataclysmic events, carry in their bloodline a genetic mutation. Perhaps this genetic mutation was deeply imprinted into the central nervous system of some of our forebears who actually experienced and survived a sudden slippage in the Earth's tectonic plates or a supernova explosion. Such a genetic mutation passed in genetic structures or DNA from generation to generation may explain why some of us today are more acutely sensitive to subtle earth tremors than our neighbors. In any case, this book, The Ultimate Frontier, started your mental processes working along these lines. Number 2. They were already working along this line, just like many peoples are without knowing about it. I had started into investigation of phenomena and mysticism on my own because my religious convictions couldn't answer my questions. Going to different churches and checking them out, I found it didn't answer my questions as to why I am. I've always wanted to know why. The human physiology is a remarkable thing. Why should it be? Why should we be different than the animals? Why should we have these philosophies when no other animals has philosophies? I studied many of the standard religions, but they couldn't answer my question to my satisfaction. I didn't like the idea of blind faith. I didn't like the idea of blind faith. To me, blind faith is irresponsible and unreasonable. Then I got into science and became an atheist. I was working on a master's degree in anthropology and found that, just like the churches, the information from the scientific side fell short. They can't answer all the questions. In fact, the more we learn, the more anomalies we have, and we realize how little we know. Then my son, who at the time was 4.5 years old, nearly drowned. In fact, he did drown. He was full of salt water and unconscious for 45 minutes. He should by all rights have died. The year was 1960. I was eating in a restaurant on the beach when I saw him floating face down in the water. I ran across the beach, jumped into the water, handed him to my brother, who handed him to a strange old man who appeared to be a derelict. When this old man pumped out the water, I was in shock, one of my son, for the next 45 minutes. He refused to give my son to the ambulance crew and the doctor who arrived and pronounced him dead. The old man looked into my eyes and said, "This boy isn't dead. I'm going to bring him back." I told the doctor, let him keep trying, and the old man kept working. 45 minutes is a long period of time to remain unconscious without breathing. However, my son not only recovered without brain damage from that episode, but he told us in the hospital exactly all of the events that took place. From me running out of that restaurant, jumping across the breakwater, diving into the water, and getting him, handing him up to my brother. He recalled all of this as if he had been watching it as a spectator, and yet he was unconscious. I mean, he wasn't Gene Dixon or anything. That personal experience was positive proof in my mind that the human mind is a lot greater than that body. Number 1, did it reinforce a previous belief, or did it really serve to allow you to see for the first time that there are other realities? Number 2, it made me relook at some of my own experiences. It made me stop and think about a lot of things. For instance, the first thing it made me think of is when I was studying anthropology. I was studying the theory of evolution, chance evolution, chemistry just providing a scenario for itself to keep procreating and surviving and improving and so on. If we accept evolution as the ultimate answer, we have to accept a ludicrous notion that atoms, all matter, is made up of the atomic elements, can so arrange themselves as to be able to give themselves abstract qualities such as memory, desire, will, curiosity, consciousness, conscience, creativity, intuition, emotion, and reason. How can you get that chemically? You can't. It has to be something else that is endowed, and man is the only one that has it. A goat doesn't see the stars or know what's over the mountain or know anything about life and death. You see, but we do. These ideas were in my head, and intuitively I knew there was much more. But when that happened to my son, I realized that I, too, am a discrete bundle of mental energy. Only I didn't have that phraseology for it. I didn't know about what life was all about as I feel I do now. Number 1, were you able to determine the capability of the human being to deal with all these diverse areas of knowledge? Number 2, certainly I am doing it and I'm nothing extraordinary. I am dealing with all of these areas of knowledge in a relaxed and causal and fun way. And I feel that I am growing. I am not impatient about my growth because I know that someday, if I continue to try to improve myself, if I continue to use those qualities of mind that I have, then I will become as perfect as humanly possible. Now, according to our basic beliefs in this country, human beings are created in the image of their Creator. To me, that means we have the same qualities of mind. We're certainly not the physical image, but the mental image. We have will, memory, desire, curiosity, consciousness, creativity, conscience. I've gone through those before. Intuition, emotion, reason. Those 10 qualities of mind are the same qualities as the Creator has. Perhaps we can never become absolute perfection as the Creator. Whatever it is must have been. I cannot conceive of the creative force, not enough to verbalize it and make sense to everyone, but I think we can obtain relative perfection and become one with the Creator by improving ourselves based upon what we have to work with. There's no limit to human abilities, to what humans can do. We limit ourselves by our own conditioning. Number 1. Do you think that most people are really trying to find out about all these things? Number 2. Many humans are. I would say there are millions of people who have an inner urging towards something better, especially in this day and age, because now there are more of them here. Out of the great majority, roughly 220 million people today in the United States, only about 2 or 3 million are really interested in what makes them tick. What is involved in life, the purpose of it all, and in really growing and building on their character. The other 200 and something million are merely living a conditioned response from their environment, and they don't think about it at all. Look, here we are in the city of Atlanta, a huge city. Look at the people walking back and forth. They're positive in many ways, and yet they never really give it a thought as to why they are, why they're capable of building these tremendous buildings and driving those tremendous vehicles they drive. Catholicism has been losing quite a few members because those members say that their religion is not in tune with the times, and this is the case in many other religious bodies. Do you believe that formal religion is just not keeping in tune with the times, or has it ever been in tune with them? Number 2. Oh, considerably in tune. Essentially it's this. The church for the last 2,000 years has done a remarkable job with what it's had to work with. Remember, they're dealing with part of the truth. Part of the truth. I've just finished this week a new book called The Life and Death of Planet Earth. Now, what it points out is that the absolute truth is what we're all trying to find out, and we prove this subjectively. We know it, and nobody can change our minds. Because we know it just like I know that fire burns my fingers because I've stuck them in there. You can tell me all you want, but I won't believe it until I do it. Knowledge is what we're seeking. The churches started off with a paradigm, a framework of understanding, and they had to work within that framework, and their framework was quite narrow. Then Jesus came along and broadened it tremendously. He resurrected the ideas of love and brotherhood, and working, you too can do as I do. He was showing by his lifestyle that you can be perfect. You can know yourself. You can know your Creator. You can know what it's all about. All you have to do is get off the dime and stop being so lazy and pay attention. That's what he was saying. Human beings have a tendency to want to put frameworks around things so they can be comfortable with them. So the early church put a framework around the truth. Theologians have translated and interpreted what has been said by all the great teachers until it's been quite distorted. However, even with all of the translations and misinterpretations of what was really said in the ancient times, they've done a remarkable job. They've done some bad things as well as good things in the eye of history. But the information is here. All you have to do is want it and dig for it. I found it. I found it for myself. There's more than one path. The reason I followed the path of the Great Pyramid is because I'm a doubter, a skeptic, and there's something made of stone, the world's largest stone structure. It can be checked and rechecked and measured and remeasured. It's been around for a very, very long time, and there's no doubt it's there. However, the metaphysical idea, somebody going into a trance and some voice talking through him telling me he's Jesus, that doesn't prove anything to me. It could be, but I could never prove it. I can prove what the Great Pyramid does, and that turned me on. There are answers to everyone's questions. We each have progressed, you see. I accept we've lived many thousands of lifetimes. Let me repeat that. I accept we've lived many thousands of lifetimes. People say, oh, reincarnation, I can't believe that. Well, they probably didn't believe it in their last lifetime either. I probably didn't either. However, each time we live a life, we learn something more towards this perfection. We're supposed to be growing until finally we reach a point where we choose our incarnation with such great care that we incarnate to two very sharp parents, at which point we grow with a tremendous rate of speed. That's the purpose of it all. Civilization's purpose is to provide the playground, the background, the environment that enhances soul growth, character growth, an environment which enhances the ability of humans to practice the virtues. By practicing these virtues, love, brotherhood, and working, you too can do as I do, which are part of universal law. What you put out comes back to you, karma. You set an example for others by practicing patience, tolerance, forbearance, kindness, and charity. In your everyday life, you grow. By your example, you set off a multitude of self-sustaining series of events, a chain reaction which strengthens the truth. I found this for myself. This is the message in all of the esoteric teachings in all 7 of the great religions. I think the key thing that the present human civilization is missing is that the idea has been lost that we're all responsible. Individual responsibility has been lost. We want some wizard to come along and do it for us. We want the preacher on Sunday to save us from our sins. We want the man in the confessional booth to cleanse us. We don't want to do it for ourselves. Well, there are no wizards. Every single ego, every single created individual or discrete bundle of mental energy must do it for himself. This is part of the message of the Great Pyramid, and as soon as humans realize this and take responsibility for their actions, the problems of the planet Earth will be diminished 1,000-fold. Number 1. I found it most fascinating, the fact you mentioned a moment ago that the individual ego has a hand in the choice of his or her own incarnated person. Number 2. This is esoteric information. I use the term esoteric information. Esoteric meaning inside information. And it's only information that has been given to me. I have not proven it yet. Even if I did prove it, it would still be only information to you. So the difference between information and knowledge is clear. We need to make that clear. Now, my information is that each of us chooses our parents and our station and our situation, even our race. Listen to this, folks. Listen to this crap. Beginning again. One of the individuals that I have been told about in this esoteric information was George Washington Carver, who deliberately incarnated into a race that was downtrodden to work on the idea of bringing them up. He was an ego of tremendous advancement, and when he did incarnate into that environment, which was a terrible environment, I understand he may have lost a few points because he became embittered near the end. Had he remained without bitterness, he would have gained. This is the story I have. We all take a chance incarnating into a civilization that can drag us down, because when you get inside of a physical body, you become subject to the nuisances of that animal body and the conditioning and the responses, and it's up to you with those 10 qualities of mind to overcome those. That's why being well-disciplined is vitally important, and permissiveness is not wise. Well, folks, there's no way I'm going to be able to read you all of this interview because it's just too long. So I'm going to pick out some pertinent points. This is number 2 talking. And this is an excerpt from a paragraph. However, don't permit it. Don't say laziness is good for everybody because you won't get uptight if you're lazy. We have so many errors on the idea of human potential and what to do with it. I believe in being well-disciplined but not cruelly. I believe in responsibility in the organization I belong to. The STEL group. The STEL group. The group in which Lars Hansen was reared. Now I want to quote to you from a book called The New World Order by A. Ralph Epperson, which you can order from Publius Press in Tucson, Arizona. On page 67 in The New World Order, Mr. A. Ralph Epperson has a direct quote from Eklal Kushana. He was the leader of the Stell group. Mr. Tex Mars also has the same quote in one or two of his books. But I'm taking this from the New World Order by A. Ralph Epperson. Quote, Lucifer is the head of a secret brotherhood of spirits. The brotherhood is named after Lucifer because the great angel Lucifer has been responsible for the abolishment of Eden in order that men could begin on the road to a spiritual advancement, unquote. That is the teachings of the leader of the Stell group, the group that this man belongs to. So, folks, pay attention. This again is number 2 speaking. This is a part of the message, a band of men at the dawning of the age of Taurus, a more civilized age embodied in the Great Pyramid's mathematical code, to transmit to a generation of humans living in the age of Aquarius, something they felt was vitally important. The age of Aquarius began 23 August 1953, and this is a New Age idea, the idea that we can perceive and try to improve. Of course, there's still a larger majority of humans, even in the age of Aquarius, that want to drag people down and lower the standards. However, every single ego, every single human, has the capabilities of bringing himself up to the equal of his Creator. It's just a matter of effort and patience and practicing the virtues. Number 1. As Jesus stood between the 2 columns, Jachin and Boaz, in the outer porch of King Solomon's temple, John 10, verse 23, on 25th December, the celebration of the winter solstice, which is what that date is really for, a large majority of the people did not understand him when he said, Ye are gods. John 10, verse 34. Some people in the crowd took up stones to kill him as a money changer in the temple cocked his head away from his table to see what some in the crowd were yelling about. He heard Jesus say, Is it not written in your law, I said ye are gods, as he saw a lawgiver of the temple sit bolt upright to listen to this man speaking to the crowd. The money changer wondered why such an important lawgiver of the temple sat up to listen, as rigid as a rod of iron, remembering the law and his responsibility, as the lawgiver remembered Psalm 82, verse 6. He remembered a song of Asaph, in which God said, Ye are gods. The man speaking to the crowd said, The Father is in me, and I in him. And what he meant could not have been other than what he said. As the crowd screamed blasphemy and moved forward to kill Jesus, he simply disappeared. So when you say humans have the capability to bring themselves up to the equal of their Creator, it would seem to me that this New Age idea is in reality a very, very ancient idea. However, you did say that this was part of the message of the Great Pyramid. But what about these ancient brotherhoods, these people who are responsible for all this secret type of teaching, which seems to be such a mystical notion? Are they still around today? Number 2. I think so, very much. In fact, I could say, I know it. You could say it's information now. The brothers are those individuals who have obtained a degree of advancement over other humans. This also is number 2. If you meet a brother and you get him alone and you say, I've noticed about you certain things and I want to ask if you are familiar with the Rosicrucians or the Masons or the Stell group or the book, The Ultimate Frontier, or some of these metaphysical philosophies, you, when you ask, are allowing him to interfere in your environment. This is the teacher appearing when the student is ready. But unless you ask, the brothers won't help. And here's the crux, folks. Number 2. Yes, the 5th level of intelligence is responsible for the direct work with the planet. And they can make mistakes. The story of Lucifer and Jehovah is a tale of the mistake made by the angelic intelligence. The argument between the angelic forces on the 5th level of existence is that Jehovah, according to my philosophy, believed that humans could advance with a perfect environment, so at first humans were given the Edenic state. All they had to do was eat bananas, sleep, chase the girls, make love, swim, sun, and sleep. But they didn't grow in that Edenic state. They were lazy. All they wanted to do was eat, drink, make love, and sleep some more. They didn't want to grow. So Lucifer said, we should help mankind grow. And you know the rules. We can't go down and do it for them, so we'll give them problems to overcome. And zap, like the thunderbolt of Zeus, Eden was gone, and we now have winters in Chicago, and man has to overcome. Now, folks, I don't care if this man worships Lucifer. I don't care if he believes what he believes or belongs to the mystery schools. You all know me. I believe in the Constitution and we all have a right. But when he deceives and manipulates all of us, and when on June 8, 1993, on Radio Free America, he said to the world that I am a CIA disinformation agent and it's time that you knew who this man really is. I want you to track down and read these books that he wrote. The Great Pyramid, Man's Monument to Man, New York, Pinnacle Books, 1975. The Life and Death of Planet Earth, New York, Pinnacle Books, 1977. Psychic Surgery, 1973, reprint edition, Chicago, Pocket Books, 1975. The entire text of the interview you heard tonight can be found in a book called 5-5-2000, Ice, the Ultimate Disaster, by Richard W. Noone, spelled N-O-O-N-E, and he was the interviewer number one.
Folks, research the history of Willis Carto. Research the history of the Liberty Lobby, and specifically Radio Free America.
Tom Valentine has been a member of the Stell Group for most of his life. He has also been closely connected to the Communist Party by his own admission. Wake up! The members, the high priests of the mystery schools, are enacting ordo ab chaos. Create enough chaos, and then they can step up and take control and establish order, the New World Order. Now you know why on Radio Free America Tom Valentine gets so angry when someone questions Freemasonry. Now you know why he covers for the secret societies and for Freemasonry. And now you know why he's attacked me, because I am the enemy of Mystery Babylon.
And there you have it, folks.
And yes, there you do have it, ladies and gentlemen. I want to read to you a letter that I received today. Talk about synchronicity, from my good friend in Tucson, Arizona, A. Ralph Epperson. He says, and I quote, "You might enjoy letting your listeners know about a quote I just found in a book entitled Legenda of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry for the Southern Jurisdiction of the United States, written by Albert Pike. This book was written by Mr. Pike in 1888, 3 years before he died, and was published by the 33rd Degree Council when they were in Charleston, South Carolina. This quote should settle the question once and for all as to who the God is that the Masons worship in their lodges. Here in Tucson, one of their lodges is called a cathedral, and another is called a temple, two words describing places of worship. This quote will prove concretely that the God they worship is not the God of the Bible. I had been looking for this book by Pike for many years, and presumed that it was out of print because I couldn't locate a copy. However, I knew it was not forgotten because Rex Hutchins, then a 32nd degree Mason, but who later became a 33rd degree Mason, quoted from it in his Masonic book entitled A Bridge to Light. So I considered it fortunate when I found that a publisher of out-of-print and rare books called Kessinger Publishing Company in Keela, Montana, had reprinted it. It is their claim that Legenda is a series of monographs intended to supplement the ritualistic instruction of the book written by Mr. Pike called Morals and Dogma. As you know, the first 10 words of the Bible are found in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, and are, quote, "In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth," unquote. That means that in the time before there was something, there had to be nothing. So God created something out of nothing when he created the universe, or there would not have been a need for a beginning. But Mr. Pike does not agree. This is what he says on page 109 of Legenda in his explanation of the 28th degree. Quote, "Nothing is produced from nothing, because existence can no more cease to be than nothing can cease not to be. To say that the world came forth from nothing is to propose a monstrous absurdity. Everything that is proceeds from that which was, and consequently nothing of that which is can ever not be." The letter I in the word is was capitalized by Mr. Pike. It is customary to capitalize the first letter in the name of a deity or a noun that refers to a deity. Does this mean that he is making a deity out of matter? Well, folks, Lucifer is the god of the material world. So Mr. Pike says that those of us who believe in a God who created the universe out of nothing believe in a monstrous absurdity. The Christians and the Jews who believe in the God of the Old and New Testaments believe in a monstrous absurdity when they profess that their God created the universe out of nothing. Let there be no doubt, Pike told his readers that he and the Masons do not worship the Creator God. They worship a secret and concealed God in their cathedrals and temples who cannot create anything. In fact, Mr. Pike agreed with that statement. He wrote this about their, quote, sun god, unquote, on pages 253 and 254 of Morals and Dogma. I might remind you that Radio Free America is carried by the Sun Radio Network. Quote, Amun, at first the god of Lower Egypt, was the sun god. He created nothing, unquote. And to show that this is true, he repeated the idea on page 281. Quote, the supreme being of the Egyptians was Amun, a secret and concealed god, the original light. He creates nothing, unquote. Yet he calls this god the supreme being. If the universe had two gods, one who created everything from nothing, and one who created nothing, I would presume the first god who made everything, including the second god, would be superior to the second god who created nothing. So the only way you can resolve this problem, if you believe in this second God who created nothing, is to claim that there is no Creator God. Then your God can then become the Supreme Being. And that is what Mr. Pike did. Make no mistake about it. The Masons do not worship the Creator God, the God who made the world out of nothing. And that is why they have chosen to call their God the great architect of the universe. And that is why the Brotherhood in the ancient times was called the Builders, and today are called Freemasons, or Freemasons in the French. It is known that architects do not draw plans to create a structure out of nothing. They design structures that must be built from existing materials, or, if you will, out of materials that must be changed from one form to another before they can be integrated into a structure. The Masons worship some other being, one that they know can create nothing, and that includes the Stell group. That includes the ancient order of the Rosencross, the Knights Templars, the sovereign and military order of the Knights of Malta, and all of the rest of these skunks. The number one Mason of all time has said it, ladies and gentlemen, in his own writings. I have never claimed that Tom Valentine was a Freemason. I have only claimed what you have heard in this broadcast tonight, and I am sick of his stinking lies, and I am sick and tired of you stupid sheeple out there who cannot study or listen or repeat exactly what you hear, but have to make up some strange tale in order to cover your pathetic ignorance. Ladies and gentlemen, I do not attack people, I reveal them. I wish nobody ill will. I don't care what altar anyone worships upon. You are listening to a true constitutionalist who believes 100% in our right to practice the religion of our choice. I would fight for any one of you if that right were threatened to be taken away. Where I draw the line is when you lie, when you deceive, and when you manipulate the rest of us to pit us against each other so that you can bring about your silly, stupid utopia, your dream of 1,000 years of peace on this earth. You will never do it because you are mankind just like me and everyone else who you claim are nothing but cattle. And because you are man just like me and everyone else, you suffer for the same inherent failings that I and everybody else who lives upon this earth suffers from. You have the same temptations and the same greed, and you fight every day against these things. And to say that you are the only truly mature minds in this world, and that you are going to control the rest of us because we do not have the capability or the power to think for ourselves, is not only ludicrous, but is what eventually will bring you to your knees as we round you up and throw you in the jails and the prisons where you belong, and stop your wrecking of all the good that man has built upon the face of this earth. Don't pervert my words, because I'm the only one you'll ever hear on the radio who uses fact, who uses the own words of the people that I talk about, and I have no ulterior motive of trying to hurt anyone. The only reason for this broadcast, and for me sitting here, ladies and gentlemen, is to wake the sheeple, empower the people, and try, like hell, to save freedom for not only this country, but for the entire world. Now, if you cannot understand what you heard tonight, then you are one of the most stupid ones out there. Those of you who are sheeple, who think you understood but aren't quite sure, but you believe that you are getting some meaning from what you heard tonight, you have a chance. And of course, the rest of you, the people who have listened to the over 32 hours of the mystery series that we've aired on this program, you already know the truth. And you are the hope for the future in this nation. Ladies and gentlemen, I've said it before and I'll say it again. These people practice the Hegelian conflict, political resolution. And they control both sides of each conflict. Tom Valentine never said a word on his program about Freemasonry until I forced him to by my broadcasts. And if you don't believe that, you go back and listen to all the tapes. Remember, a nation or world of people who will not use their intelligence are no better than animals who do not have intelligence. Such people are beasts of burden and stakes on the table by choice and consent. Shortly after I originally ran this program, Tom Valentine came on with the master of the Stell Group and claimed that he became a Christian in 1968 and left the Stell Group forever. And that is a lie, because in the interview that you just heard, he claimed that he was loyal to the group to which he belonged, the Stell Group. That interview was conducted in 1976, and that book was published in 1982. I've said it before, I will say it again. Tom Valentine, you are a liar, and if you are not, sue me. We'll let a court of law determine it. I have all the evidence I need, mister. All of you out there listening, good night. And whether you believe it or not, I mean this from my heart. God bless you all. Across the Americas and around the world, once again you're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm your host, William Cooper, and in studio,
it's Carolyn Nelson.
Folks, I'm going to be on a little investigative trip here for the next week, and while I'm gone, you're going to hear reruns on both time slots. Those of you listening now have probably never heard these episodes of the Hour of the Time, and you should always listen to this broadcast with a pad of paper and a pencil or pen by your side. Never, ever make the mistake of sitting down without a pad of paper and a pen or pencil to listen to the Hour of the Time. We have very short patience around here for people who do not follow directions. So if you call up and want us to recount the show for you because you didn't have your pad of paper and your pencil, I'm sorry, we don't have time to do that. We're very, very busy here. So make sure you get it the first time. If you miss a telephone number because we only say it once, that's okay. Now, I want you all to remember and try to catch both broadcasts each day, simply because they're not the same, ever. What's broadcast in this time slot, 5 p.m. Pacific, 6 Mountain, 7 Central, and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, is not the same information that is broadcast during the later time slot, which is 9 Pacific, 10 Mountain, 11 Central, and midnight Eastern Standard Time. Tonight's show is important, for it verifies everything that I've been telling you in the Mystery Babylon series, which we have done 31 episodes of, and we have included The Dawn of Man, which ran prior to the production of the Mystery Babylon series, in any orders for this series. So that actually makes 32 tapes, but tonight's episode will be episode number 32 of the series known as Mystery Babylon. Don't go away, folks. You need to know what you're going to hear tonight. For those of you who don't believe that those who call themselves illumined, the only truly mature minds in this world, and thus are the only ones capable of deciding the future or of ruling the rest of us, those of you who don't believe these people have infiltrated all levels of our society, our government, our military, our law enforcement, I want you to listen carefully to what I'm going to read you. I'm going to quote verbatim an article which appeared in the newsletter called Aid and Abet Police Newsletter, Volume 2, Constitutional Issues for Lawmen, Number 1, Volume 2, Number 1. That's Aid and Abet Police Newsletter. Now, this letter, according to the editor of this newsletter, was written by a police chief. Here he uses a pseudonym, so he says, so that the police chief's identity is not revealed. However, as you will find out if you have listened to our series on Mystery Babylon, this is not just a police chief. This is a highly degreed member of the Masonic Lodge. And he gives himself away with his symbology. For at the end of his article, he signs it, quote, "So mote it be," unquote. Aid and Abet is put out by Officer Jack McLam, who has been written up as one of the best police officers ever produced by the state of Arizona. We neither endorse him, nor do we condemn him. As far as Kaji is concerned, our vote is not in yet on this organization. We know that in order to bring about the New World Order, they need to identify everyone who will uphold the real law, the Constitution, the supreme law of the land. They need to identify those people and get them out of positions of authority, and if necessary, take them out of society completely. There are organizations which exist solely for the purpose of identifying those people in government, those people in the patriot community, those police officers serving in police organizations who would ultimately support the Constitution and the Bill of Rights against any effort to destroy it. Aid and Abet may be one of these means. We do not know that for certain. But if you listen to this letter, because it's signed with a pseudonym, may not be from a police chief at all, but may be from those who control Aid and Abet to tell the police officers what is expected of them in the New World Order. Again, we do not know this to be true, but we have discovered, ladies and gentlemen, in our investigations that those who oppose us, who would destroy us, use the Hegelian dialectic of political conflict resolution. They control both sides of every issue. They set in motion methods and means to identify their enemy and destroy their enemy before their enemy can hurt them. And that's why we have been on the losing end for literally thousands of years with these people. I now quote from this newsletter. To the question of, do some judges, prosecutors, and police officers today commit dishonest acts to put criminals away? I answer an unequivocal yes. But it is hoped that it is not done without just cause. True immorality exists only when the cause is not just. Notice how they've turned the definition of morality around. It goes on, after more than 20 years of service to my fellow Americans, I realize what reality is. The truth is that today many judges, attorneys, police officials, and officers are devotees of the religion of secular humanism, myself included. Some of our members, mainly out of fear, will not admit that SH is a religion, that secular humanism is a religion. They are apprehensive that we might be treated as the so-called Christians have been treated under the doctrine of separation of church and state. Such fear might be well-founded if this were 15 to 20 years ago. Not so today. Reason being, colleagues of our faith are, for the most part, in control of the agencies and organizations such as the ACLU, ABA, Justice Department, etc., that would normally protest such cases. Although this may at first seem unfair, it is not. But allow me to proceed, and I believe you will come to full understanding of this and many other important facts. My feelings are that it is time we shepherds open the eyes of our flock and further sort out those we cannot take with us into the 21st century. I'm going to pause here. In case you don't understand exactly what this man just said, I'm going to read this paragraph again to you. Remember, this is purported to be a police chief writing under a pseudonym to the police newsletter called Aid and Abet. Listen very carefully, ladies and gentlemen, and you'll see when I've labeled you sheeple, I have not been incorrect. Quote, my feelings are that it is time we shepherds open the eyes of our flock and further sort out those we cannot take with us into the 21st century. Those of you who thought that I was insane when I told you that if you don't go along with the New World Order, if you can't renounce your old religion and your old societal ways and your old morals and conform to the new age, you will be exterminated. They make no secret of this. I continue. Any that would deny that our religion of secular humanism is not a valid religion should do their homework. The Supreme Court decided that it is a religion some years ago in the Torcaso versus Abington versus Shemp, and in Torcaso versus Watkins cases. According to the High Court, it is, quote, belief, not body, creed, or cult, which appears to be the essence of religion, unquote. It further explains that, quote, belief refers to some sort of universal view of life, of the world of mankind, a belief that is held to be true about mankind, unquote. In essence, the Supreme Court said that one's religion can be, quote, any world view with or without reference to God, theistic or non-theistic in nature, unquote. I hope this helps others to understand our faith. However, this, of course, is not the main point of my speech. I wish to address the abuse of police officers who ascribe, knowingly or unknowingly, to the moral tenets of our religion in regards to ethics and morals. Nationwide, our devotees are enduring horrible discrimination at the hands of a very hypocritical faction of society, the Christians. This discrimination comes as we humanists exercise our own religious beliefs and apply our morals, quote, on the job, unquote, so to speak. Yet other officers may apply their own individual belief systems, morals, and ethics at will without any condemnation. This is undeniable discrimination. Fortunately, our religion is the fastest growing of any in all of history, and many of the younger generation within the criminal justice system, including police officers who ascribe to sound secular humanist principles, are now in management, which is of benefit to all. This does give us sway power and is a plus for our side. Still, there is far too much discrimination against those who would apply a most important principle of our religion. Quote, situation ethics, unquote. The principle of situation ethics allows the individual to focus correctly on only the goal to be accomplished. Morally speaking, little, if any, consideration need be given to the method or means, as nothing else supersedes its importance. Of course, concern is given to finding a means of accomplishing a task or goal so as to have the least negative impact on the least amount of our people. Notice he says our people. In my youth, I recall hearing the great Green Bay Packer coach Vince Lombardi describe it this way, quote, winning is not everything, it is the only thing, unquote. Much of our society lives by this principle today. Yes, even many of those who profess other faiths and occupy pulpits throughout America. Personally, I think the principle of situation ethics is best described by examining the legal definition of ethics and morals given by our now compatriots, the communists. The communist definition is, quote, everything is ethical and moral as long as it promotes world communism, unquote. This is pure secular humanism. We can learn much, incidentally, about total commitment from the communists. The Marxists have, out of pragmatic necessity, expurgated a minimum of 90 million people in the pursuit of man's noblest mission, world peace. What intelligent person could call immoral any means used to accomplish this all-important goal. Do you think this guy's playing with a full load of bricks here? I don't. And he continues, in our great humanist manifestos, signed in 1933 and 1973, we explain our moral creed, which is very much the same as the Marxist creed, yet set forth in much more palatable and tactful terms. Here is a brief summation of our beliefs regarding ethics and truth. Ethics. Moral values derive their source from human experience. Ethics is autonomous and situational, needing no theological or ideological sanction. Ethics stems from human need and interest. To deny this distorts the whole basis of life. We strive for the good life here and now. And that's from the Humanist Manifesto 2, written and signed in 1973. Authority and truth. We reject those features of traditional religious morality that denies humans a full appreciation of their own potentialities and responsibilities. Traditional religions often offer solace to humans, but as often they inhibit humans from helping themselves or experiencing their full potentialities. We can discover no divine purpose or providence for the human species. Humans are responsible for what we are or will become. Remember, folks, I educated you in that part of the Masonic religion, and the religion of the Rose and Cross, and the Knights Templar, and the Knights of Malta, the Red Cross of Constantine. All of these believe that man is in a state of becoming. Becoming what? Becoming gods. I continue. Humans are responsible for what we are or will become. No deity will save us. We must save ourselves. That's from the Humanist Manifesto 2, 1973. After 20-plus years of conditioning, our society now largely subscribes to this philosophy. Some of you who practice selective Christianity are closer to our faith than to the superstitions of the Bible thumpers of old. In selective Christianity, of course, you choose certain portions of the so-called Word of God to believe in and discard the parts that are not convenient. Don't you see that in this we are just alike? Your faith is actually based upon what is right under man's desire. We humanists are in fact more honest. We admit that there is no God, that it is only man's desires that are important. You leaders of these selective Christians preach that your faith is based on some parts of God's law, but in actuality the majority is based on what feels good or is convenient. Now I must break here for just a second, folks, to tell anyone who may have just tuned in that these are not my words. You're sitting there with your lower jaw on your chest, looking aghast at your radio. You are not listening to the thoughts of William Cooper or the hour of the time. I am quoting verbatim from a letter attributed to a police chief, and this letter can be found in Aid and Abet, a police newsletter, volume 2, number 1, in case you want to pursue this. Quite obviously, I'm continuing now, quite obviously, America's government now operates under the guiding principles of humanism. Deception, lying, cheating, stealing, killing is all moral if it promotes the attainment of our essential goals. This is true righteousness. Folks, I got to stop right here and tell you this is true bullshit. This is deception at its worst. For these people are actually believing that wrong is right and right is wrong. And that is exactly what we were warned about in these days. And that is what I warned you about in my book, Behold a Pale Horse. And I told you years ago that the belief of these people is that the ends justify the means, whatever they might be. If they must kill 2 billion people to make their dream come true, they will do it. Mark my words, they will do it. A prime example, I continue now, a prime example can be seen in the recent war against Iraq. Over 250,000 have lost their lives so far, and more are dying every day, all for the attainment of a higher good, the goal of our great humanist leaders, world peace through world government. You see, the writer of this letter understood what I understood about the Gulf War. It wasn't about Iraq taking Kuwait. It was, in fact, about a new world order. George Bush even stated that. He said in our speech, his speech, I should say, our fifth goal in the Middle East is a new world order. Though I would venture to say that he stated it as his fifth goal in order not to give it too much attention in the public eye. It was actually the first goal, ladies and gentlemen. I continue. This New Age teaching is the reason why, for example, a police officer, one of secular humanist persuasion, is likely to risk his very life to save a member of society one moment, and the very next moment take the witness stand and lie in order to win an important case. This is not to be considered immoral, given the particular standard of ethics upon which such an officer bases his morality, namely, that the end justifies any means. In other words, again, the higher good principle. Many people still do not understand this. They don't understand that this is why our presidents and their staffs, members of Congress, and hosts of others with leadership roles in America, lawyers, judges, etc., lie and cheat right alongside our dedicated humanist law enforcers. To repeat, all for the greater good of society, or in effect the system. And I add, outside the letter written by the chief, if it is really a chief, ladies and gentlemen, that all of these people belong to the secret societies, the ones who lie and cheat and murder. And I continue. What the masses must be made to understand and never be allowed to forget is that this is for their own good. They should know by now that those who are actually in control of our government, as Colonel Oliver North explained, truly know what is best for the people. They must also know that under the New World Order, the justice system's primary mission will be to protect the system from the masses. It is precisely in view of this that we on the inside have been obligated all along to use the system to suppress dissenters as quickly as possible before any radical anti-world government, anti-humanist group can gain the upper hand. I must read that again, folks, for those of you who may be a little bit slow in understanding, and some of us are, especially with something that you can't quite grasp and never heard before. That's excusable. Again, what the masses must be made to understand and never be allowed to forget is that this is for their own good. They should know by now that those who are actually in control of our government, as Colonel Oliver North explained, truly know what is best for the people. They must also know that under the New World Order, the justice system's primary mission will be to protect the system from the masses. It is precisely in view of this that we on the inside have been obligated all along to use the system to suppress dissenters as quickly as possible before any radical anti-world government, anti-humanist group can gain the upper hand. You're aware, of course, that the vast majority of Americans seek only peace and security. They hardly even realize that they have virtually made government their new god, to which they turn for the fulfillment of every need. Our New Age leaders, and we soldiers as their arms and legs, stand ready to give the masses all for which they pray. And ladies and gentlemen, I, William Cooper, in the hour of the time, have warned you that if you don't wake up, if you don't change the course of the future, that you would get exactly what you want, and that you would be slaves in a new world order. You see, to revert to the state of childhood means you must have a daddy. Some daddies aren't too nice,
and even the nice ones restrict your personal freedoms until you reach the age of maturity. In this case, there will be no age of maturity. I can assure you. I continue with the letter. Let me repeat. Our job within the criminal justice system today is to protect the plan, the system, and punish those that our leaders decide are enemies of that system. You doubted me when I said there was a plan, ladies and gentlemen? There is the verification that there is, in fact, a plan, an ancient plan. I continue. Of course now, as with our Soviet colleagues under New Age humanist situation ethics, we are not limited in the methods we may apply to win. We can therefore proceed with unobstructed haste to make the masses safe and peaceful. Let's look again at our example of that police officer who routinely risks his life for others and yet will lie on the witness stand to help his government win some case in court. If some of you are still surprised at this, then perhaps you haven't understood what I have been trying to convey, nor have you understood what your children have learned so well over the last 20 years within the government school system. It is that we are living in a new age where man has wisely placed his trust in government instead of some superstition called the divine or God. It is the old religious morals that have caused all of our problems. A new age calls for a new belief system, a new moral code, a new religion. It is exciting to see most all of the religions of the world coming nicely together, united in preparation to serve the new world order. Remember, I told you that your religious leaders are not really on your side, and all the churches that belong to the World Council of Churches are bringing you all closer to one religion which will not resemble anything that Christ taught. I continue. We must all dedicate ourselves to obeying our leaders without question and to the instruction of succeeding generations toward our utopian goals of world peace. I would like to introduce you to one present-day scholar, Dr. Sidney Simon, who has been very effective and deserving of much credit for his efforts in this work of re-educating humanity. He speaks plainly, and his meaning is unmistakable, as when he says, quote, "We do not need any more preaching about right and wrong. The old thou shalt nots simply are not relevant." Unquote. He goes on to explain to the child educators he is addressing that, quote, "Values clarification," unquote, is a method for teachers to change the values of children without getting caught. Values clarification is just another term for situation ethics. A book in use by educators called Weep for Our Children spells out values clarification as part of the new morality. Listen to this carefully. This is a book in use by teachers teaching your children right this moment. It's called Weep for Our Children. Quote, "It's okay to lie. It's okay to steal. It's okay to have premarital sex. It's okay to cheat or to kill if these things are part of your value system and you have clarified these values for yourself. The important thing is not what values you choose, but that you have chosen them yourself freely and without coercion of parents, spouse, priest, friends, ministers, or social pressure of any kind," unquote, and that makes me very, very angry. That's one of the reasons my daughter is not in school and never will be in school. She already knows more now than most children twice her age from the homeschooling that she gets. This is incredible. Don't go away. I have to take a breath. It makes me angry just to read this crap.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to read the last paragraph again. I want you to hear this. Remember, this is a book in use by teachers, educators, called Weep for Our Children, and it spells out values clarification as part of the new morality. Quote, "It's okay to lie. It's okay to steal. It's okay to have premarital sex. It's okay to cheat or to kill if these things are part of your value system and you have clarified these values for yourself. The most important thing is not what values you choose, but that you have chosen them yourself freely and without coercion of parents, spouse, priest, friends, ministers, or social pressure of any kind." Unquote. It is such that secular humanism proponents in the government schools, the teachers whom we can thank for remolding the values of these next generations. When the government national child care bill is passed, it will be a great day for humanists and proponents of world peace. What wonders we can achieve once we have the attention of the nation's preschoolers for 6 to 9 hours a day. Look what we have already accomplished with the older age groups of America's youth. As I hinted earlier, this new society based on the deity of man will demand a new kind of law enforcer. Remember I told you? They believe that man is in a state of becoming. Becoming what? A god. He says, as I hinted earlier, this new society based on the deity of man will demand a new kind of law enforcer. One of our educators said to me some weeks ago, America's religious zealots of the past would be shocked at the changes the people have allowed. She was correct, for after all, it was James Madison that said, quote, "We have staked the whole future of American civilization not upon the power of government, far from it. We have staked the future upon the capacity of each and all of us to govern ourselves, to sustain ourselves, according to the 10 Commandments of God." Unquote. But it is a new day, and we are fast proceeding into the 21st century. Americans no longer wish to assume the responsibilities of governing themselves. Happily for them, there is a whole new generation of very dedicated leaders and enforcers in government to see that they are cared for. Let me address for a moment the question of police manpower. As the citizens relinquish out of fear more of their rights, more enforcers are required to regulate and supervise the people's activities so that they remain safe and peaceful. Who would have thought 100 years ago that the integration of fear of literally everything would have been the answer to establishing the New World Order? Credit for this innovation goes to the free thinkers of the last generation. And folks, if you think he's wrong, just look at yourselves. Look what you've put up with. Look what you've allowed to happen. Look at the state our nation is in. Look at the fact that we've already lost most of the Bill of Rights, the portion of the Constitution known as the first 10 Amendments. You all file and pay income taxes, which you are not required to file or pay. You do everything out of fear. And that's why you're known as the sheeple. Most of you. Not all, but most, without any doubt. Most of you, that title fits like a handmade pair of Italian shoes. It's very comfortable, isn't it? Isn't it? Now the older generation, known as peace officers, servants of the people, might not so readily have adopted nor fit into this new order of things. Fortunately, this has not posed too great a problem due to the fact that they are rapidly being replaced through natural attrition, in effect death or retirement. And now Hillary's running around the country, folks, wants to open a dialogue on euthanasia. Timely, isn't it? I continue. The next 7 to 8 years will see the last of them removed. At the same time, police agencies are of necessity attempting more and more to screen out before hiring those prospective officers who believe in the old religious superstitions. This is wise because these zealots will not do the things that will be required of them under the new system. Those remaining police officers who openly profess a belief system steeped on old-world religious fundamentalism can be and are being phased out on any number of charges, such as can be substantiated over time or with the help of a little innovation on the part of new management. And we believe that this organization, Aid and Abet, may be the organ used to identify those police officers. I continue. Before I continue, I better clarify, folks. We believe that, and we have good grounds for our belief. However, we cannot prove it. You must make up your own mind, yourselves. I continue. Some of these old-time officers complain that this type of job discrimination is unconstitutional and immoral. But we know they are wrong. Under situation ethics, all things are moral as long as they promote the goal. Therefore, they are not being removed for any evil cause. They are incompatible and simply non-functional for the duties that will be required of them. You might ask yourself, ladies and gentlemen, what are the duties that will be required of them? I think you've already seen some examples at Ruby Ridge, in Waco, Texas, and many other places. And I go on with the letter. I feel I need to say again that if a professional police officer must lie against those who violate the law, then it is moral. The same is true when government judges and attorneys withhold evidence and witnesses from the jury to win their cases. When a politician lies to win an office or makes deals that promote the new order, it is moral. Let me tell you what is truly immoral. I will use the issuance of traffic citations as only one example. True immorality is when 5 out of 10 good upstanding citizens take the witness stand, swear an oath to their God, and then proceed to fabricate lies to get out of their tickets. This our enforcement officers witness daily in court. To them, this is not only immoral, but highly hypocritical. The enforcer's dishonesty helps society as a whole. If a government agent lied for personal reasons, then it would be immoral. If done for the betterment of mankind, it is not. And that is the most important lesson I bring you today. It is one thing when a leader or agent of government has to lie or otherwise deceives his subjects. It is quite another when an ordinary individual from among the masses, quote, bites the hand that feeds him, unquote, by lying to those who are bringing salvation in this brave new world. Do we see this important difference? The old world understood that it was the greatest of sins to lie or to deceive God. The generations of devotees that wish to enter the new world must likewise be brought to the understanding that it is the greatest of sins to lie to deceive their new God government. Any such disloyalty would surely hamper the progress of those engaged in ushering in the glorious new world order. We are not concerned with the few who may resist this new order, for out of pragmatic necessity their fate has been amply allowed for in the master plan. What we are most concerned about at present is that the obedient masses be made to understand that it is detrimental to progress for them to suggest that their supervisors wallow under the pressure and futility of the antiquated superstitions, morals, and dogma of the past. There will be some difficult changes facing the person entering this new society. On these issues, however, we can assure the people there will be no compromise. Thank you for listening. May the blessing of the new order come swiftly upon us So mote it be. So mote it be is taken directly from the initiation ceremonies of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, and you will hear it nowhere else, ladies and gentlemen. Whoever wrote this was a highly degreed Freemason of the Scottish Rite, and he is, under a pseudonym, explaining the true purpose, the true religion, and the true plan for the religion that those who frequent the lodge actually adhere to. So you see, in aid and abet, a police newsletter, volume 2, number 1, all of the police officers who subscribe to this newsletter are the good guys. The good guys. They have been delivered a warning from a police chief under a pseudonym, which makes it very plain what will happen to any police officer who does not go along with the new world order. And I say that it was intentionally that way, and that there is no police chief, Rupert Orpheus, pseudonym or not, but this is the policy that needed to be explained to all of these officers at once to hasten their decision. You see, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes right down to it, most people will do what they're told, when they're told, if they're told, and they have been told. I hope that you are intelligent enough to understand what you have just heard and exactly what it means. If you are not, dear sheeple, God have mercy upon your soul. You're going to need it. Those long-time listeners to the hour of the time, those who have been awake for quite some time, those who were never asleep, understand that there is a plan in the world that the members of the secret societies, by whatever name they call themselves to you, the profane, in their exoteric language, are using to bring about the ages-old dream of a new world order, where the masses are totally and completely controlled for each and every second of every moment, of every hour, of every day of their lives. And where the priests of the mysteries govern in what they call a council of wise men. The public at large will not know much about this council of wise men, for there will be at the head of this council a charismatic religious and political leader. This is necessary, for the public needs somewhere to vent their emotions, their elations, their angers. And it will make no difference if they topple this leader from his throne. The real leaders will remain untouched as they have remained untouched throughout the history of the world. Those of you who really believe that this hick, William Clinton, is leading this nation and making the decisions, you probably, at some point within the last 24 hours, thought you were Rush Limbaugh and sat on half your brain. And those of you who believe that you really have a choice at election time, when the choice has already been made, and it's especially damaging if you believe that your vote really counts when it is the Electoral College that elects the president. And in fact, that's really not necessary, unless some ringer slips into the choice, like Gary Hart. Didn't you wonder where Gary Hart was completely and totally destroyed forever because someone photographed him on a boat with one woman not doing anything wrong? And Bill Clinton is not even tarnished. Don't you understand? Bill Clinton is just a messenger boy. And if he gets impeached, it will not solve anything. And those of you running around signing petitions to impeach William Clinton had better read the Constitution of the United States of America. You see, you cannot impeach a president because somebody signed a petition. I don't care if 200 million Americans sign that petition. You cannot impeach William Clinton, you fools. You must prove that he has committed high crimes and misdemeanors. And you must have solid evidence. And you must have witnesses that don't die overnight. And documentation that doesn't disappear by the time next week comes along. You understand? Once again, they have you whirling around in circles at the end of a cul-de-sac. Good night, and God bless you all.